thank you very much to start with for joining me. I appreciate your time right at the beginning of the event. To introduce myself, I am Emilie Hood and I am a consultant at Euromonitor International, specialising in beauty and personal care and consumer health. So, before I get into the sort of main body of my presentation, I'll just tell you very quickly about Euromonitor and what we do. So at the heart of it, we are a market research agency looking at global data to help our clients understand industries and consumers and base their strategies in that. We research 210 markets directly, and using on-the-ground researchers and data that we can find with secondary sources. Just to illustrate our global reach, we have a graph on screen. So we have 16 offices, with our HQ being in London, looking at 100 markets in depth, and then looking at demographic, macro, and socio-economic data in 210 markets and regions. So, to look at the industry coverage for Euromonitor, you can see that on the screen. I've highlighted the different areas of the business that I've used to build my presentation today to try and give some use cases for that. So, on to the exciting bit. So this is what we will be talking about today. I'm going to start by giving some context on the state of the industry, how beauty and personal care is doing now, and what we're looking at into the forecast. We're then going to talk about innovation in 3 different states. So we're going to talk about renovation, innovation, and disruption. And then we're just going to summarise with some key takeaways. So, for the industry context. So, it's good news. Beauty and personal care is still growing, reaching $593 billion in 2024. This data has just been published as of yesterday, so you're really getting a preview as to our full year 2024 data. That is a 7% growth on the previous year, 2023, and that is in sort of real terms, so that is including inflation. When we strip inflation away, that's a 2.9% growth for 2024. Looking at the forecast, so compound annual growth, that looks to be 6% between 2024 and 2029. And looking in, again, including inflation, when we take inflation out of that, it's 0.5%. This is down on our previous estimations from last year and the year before. A lot of it is down to the slowing down in China. So we do imagine that sort of readjusting over the next couple of years. But that is where we stand as of now. So looking at growth by region, I'm sure it comes as no surprise to anyone that Asia-Pacific is the most significant beauty and personal care market, representing around 32-31% of the global industry. We also see significant growth in emerging markets, so places like the Middle East and Africa, and also Eastern Europe. North America and Western Europe are continuing to perform well. They're fairly solid markets. You know, consumers in these markets are well established in their routines. They're habitually purchasing, and they're open to expanding their routines and trying new things. So then looking at the industry by category, again, no real surprises here. Skincare is the largest category for beauty. Again, there's a little bit of a caveat with skincare, I always think, with the fact that there are just so many products that go into skincare compared to something like fragrance. You know, a fragrance is sort of generally sort of men's, women's, unisex, whereas skincare, there's a real breadth to what consumers will be using. The growth in skincare is still pretty good, looking to the forecast, but we do expect it to slow down slightly, obviously after sort of the boom a few years ago. Hair care is doing very well. Again, it's sort of following a similar direction to skincare, where it's becoming really specialised. Consumers are buying different products for different things. We're also seeing a lot of innovation in products specifically for types of hair. So curly, kinky, coily hair, there's a lot of products entering the mass market and sort of mass channels that are performing really well. With fragrances, they are growing very quickly, and I think a lot of this is due to emerging markets and markets that haven't traditionally had a very stable relationship with fragrances. Obviously, places like Western Europe and North America, that growth is less. Looking at the slightly more exciting categories, dare I say it, bath and shower, deodorants, like baby and child specific, growth in these areas is fairly stable. You know, consumers are generally in their routines. A lot of that growth is down to population growth and sort of consumers starting to use slightly more as they feel a little bit more comfortable in their financial state. So then, moving on to innovation. It's a little bit of a nebulous term, I think. So what I've tried to do is sort of break it down into three key pillars. We have renovation, which is where brands are trying to claim shares from other brands, from other products. It's generally within the same parameters that they've previously been operating. And so it's things like rebranding, for example. Innovation, the word at the core of it all, it's growth in the industry. So it's not brand growth, it's the overall beauty and personal care growth. It's through new categories, new users, or new occasions. We then have disruption, which is something completely new, basically. I think it's the hardest to really illustrate because it is, at its core, something that is completely new and completely left of field. So what I'm going to do in that section is just give you some examples of the types of things we've seen happening in that area. So, looking at renovation. So, rebranding has started to emerge as a really key area that brands are trying to claim shares from competitors or grow their own consumer base. A couple of really interesting examples we've seen are with Barry M. That is a brand based in the UK, and they have just announced a rebrand targeting Gen Z after 43 years, I believe, staying with the original packaging and branding. It's not just beauty brands that are doing this, we're also seeing it through retailers as well. Another example, Cult Beauty, they have rebranded. They're a retailer, for anyone that isn't aware, with an e-commerce platform. And they've rebranded to have a far more editorial feel. They're really focusing at engaging with Gen Z consumers through a very creative sort of outlook. They're wanting to be seen as, like I say, editorial. They're wanting to be seen as creative visionaries as opposed to just a retailer. And that's been the reason, the motivation behind their rebrand. I believe it was the end of 2024. I've included on the screen a quote from our industry manager, Kayla, saying, Gen Z has never known a world without social media. They tend to embrace individualistic expression, but are acutely aware of external opinion. There's an undercurrent of rebellion against conventional beauty norms among this cohort. Gen Z sees beauty as a way to become one's true self, as opposed to achieving perfection. And I think it just really highlights how a lot of brands are pivoting their traditional outlook, their traditional marketing, branding, to try and really engage with Gen Z as an opportunity to grow. If anyone's interested in Gen Z, little shameless plug, I'll be here on Thursday speaking about them specifically. And just another example of renovation, again, is brands looking to invest in premiumization and sort of expanding existing lines. I think it's interesting, particularly with the state of global affairs, i.e. having super high inflation, the global economy being fairly unsteady, that a lot of brands are really seeing the benefit in expanding in premium ranges. A lot of this is focused at very niche demographics, and a good example of that is Number 7 with their menopause range. It's been really well received. Women that are in perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause are seeing the benefits of having products specifically targeted for them. So there's nothing necessarily new in these products. It's mixes of ingredients that are available if you use more than one product, but they are seeing that benefit through having products that have been renovated in a way that is making it very accessible for them. We've also seen a lot of movement in fashion houses expanding into beauty again. Again, another example, Marc Jacobs has announced that they are relaunching their beauty brand after, I believe it's about 10 years being off the market. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen Balenciaga, for example, Prada, all announcing that they're moving into the beauty space, either for the first time or as a relaunch of previous lines. On the screen, I have a graph from our innovation survey that is targeted at the industry to really understand where they're looking to invest, where they're seeing these opportunities for renovation. Obviously, targeted campaigns that are looking to capture the attention of specific demographics is one of them. Premium product launches, that kind of fits in with this, the beauty fashion house collabs that we're seeing, and then rebranding again. I think this is something that we're going to see a lot of in 2024, 2025, 2026, and looking to the later parts of the forecast as well. So, innovation, the thing we all came here to see. What I will be talking about is data from Euromonitor's innovation platform. It's a new platform. We launched it last year, and it's being very well received by clients that are using it. For the sake of today, I'm going to put it in the context of Western Europe as opposed to trying to compare the global market in that setting, as it gets a little bit difficult. So for context as to Western Europe specifically, Western Europe makes up for $119 billion of that $139 billion that we spoke about in the global market. That's a 6% growth from 2023 to 2024, and that's including inflation. It's slightly behind the global figure, but as I've mentioned, it's a fairly mature market. There's not a lot of growth in terms of consumers suddenly buying fragrance where they weren't before. 73% of European sales come from the top 5 markets. So they are Germany, the UK, France, Italy, and Spain. And so those markets are what I've used to frame the coming slides on innovation in Western Europe. I've just included, again, on the screen, a graph to show the size of each of the categories within Western Europe. Again, skincare comes as no surprise, followed by fragrance, which is obviously higher in the rankings than it is for the global total, hair care and colour cosmetics. So then, looking at innovation. In 2024, there were 3,499 new launches, just one off being a really nice round number, but what are you going to do? That's 28% down on the previous year, which sounds like there was a real harsh stop. But if we think about 2023, we were kind of seeing a lot of activations through the end of COVID. You know, it was the first real year that it felt like we were addressing a new normal. And so we did see a significantly higher new launch activation than we would expect to see. 50% of the new launches were in skincare. Again, a lot of it is down to the fact that there is so much that you can do with skincare. There are so many options, and I think that is something that beauty brands are acutely aware of. But again, that was slower than in 2023. I think an interesting area is where we're seeing the new launches being higher than they were in the previous year. And this was in hair care, bath and shower, sun, and deodorants. I also think it's quite interesting that they are in the more functional area as opposed to like colour cosmetics, fragrance, sometimes skincare, where it's a lot more of an indulgence to consumers. Bath and shower is an area that we are expecting to see more of that because it is something that is becoming a lot more indulgent as consumers are a lot more focused on self-care and wellness as a facet of beauty. We are seeing a lot of products that have these skincare claims and slightly more higher-end bath and shower offerings. So then having another little look in a more granular sense at those figures, 44% of the skincare launches that we spoke about were in moisturisers and treatments. Again, I think you're going to get bored of me saying it. It's because there's so many options. When it comes to things like treatments, that kind of encompasses serums and more condensed versions of ingredient products. And this is something that consumers are still really enjoying. We're seeing a growth in the claims of multi-purpose. Generally, consumers are trying to limit their consumption. I think there's been a lot of discussion about the environment and sustainability and how consumers could be doing more. They're also getting bored of having to buy the new thing all the time. There's a lot of churn, I think, particularly rather when you get to slightly older consumers. They don't want to have to keep buying the next new thing. And so multifunctional, multi-purpose products are really benefiting from being able to do more than one thing for them. 28%, or there was a 28% increase in claims of innovative packaging in 2024 within skincare products. A lot of that is down to regulation, obviously. Things like the change in regulation around airless pumps and things like that. But a lot of brands are also seeing that as an opportunity, which I will speak about a little bit more later. So I think when talking about innovation, it's also really important to understand what's driving that. What is the need that these brands are trying to fill within consumers' day-to-day? On the screen again, I've got some data from our Voice of the Consumer survey within the markets in Western Europe. And it's describing what consumers are looking for when they're buying hair care, skincare, colour cosmetics, and fragrance. So 33%, a third, desire value for money. I think it is very important that I stress the importance of value for money. I think when we look at all of these things, when we look at what's doing well, the kind of root of it all is the fact that consumers see it as being value for money, whether that be that it's cheap, whether that be that it's really expensive. They don't mind so long as there is a perceived value there. 26% are seeking high or superior quality products, which is an increase of 20% from 2022. We've used 2022 as it's, with consumer surveys, it kind of gives the chance for those attitudes to really bed in and illustrate whether they're a shift in behaviour or whether it's just a statistical thing. So we have seen that number increase over the 2 years. It kind of goes back, I think, to what I was saying with the renovation section, where brands are renovating, they're enjoying launching new premium products because consumers are feeling more able to buy them. Premium will always do fairly well, even if the economy is a little bit dicey, the global situation is a little dicey, because the lipstick effect is alive and well. Consumers do enjoy a little treat, and a lot of the time beauty products really weigh in on that. And then finally, quality is really taking a precedent over low price. I think, again, consumers are, they're always willing to treat themselves, you know, even, it depends, it's all on a scale. So low price for one person might be different to low price for another, but they always want to have the best product for what they can afford. So saying something is just low price isn't enough. They still need to have it to have effects. So then looking at another nice graph, this is from the Voice of the Industry survey. So this is again from beauty and personal care business leaders. And it's illustrating where they plan on investing. And this is from 2024, so this will be sort of 2025 onwards in the forecast. Premium products, again, are looking to be an area that brands are looking to invest in. They're looking at targeted campaigns, new distribution channels, formulations, and new ingredients. I think premiumization is another term that is a little bit grey. So it doesn't necessarily mean something that is very high-end. It means something that is more premium than what is existing within their product range. So it could be just a 10% increase in price, it could be 50. 20% have said they're going to invest in new new formulations or ingredients, and then sustainability is going to be a really big focus when it comes to packaging. And I think a lot of that is, again, preempting changes in regulation. It's a need, but is also being seen as an opportunity within the industry. So then, just diving down a little bit more into some of the claims that we are able to identify through the innovation system. I think I chose to pick out hair care and bath and shower to talk about something other than skincare, but also from the fact that I think it really nicely illustrates some shifts in consumer behaviour. For hair care, 45% of new launches in 2024 were in conditioners and treatments. I think with those products, there is a real perceived benefit in using them when they're specific, when they're new, and I think consumers have this sort of preconceived notion that they are going to do something, that there is going to be a real effect. And then this was followed by shampoos. Everyone uses a shampoo. That is kind of the default product when it comes to hair care. And so both of those offer an opportunity to reach new customers just through habitual use. If it's on the shelf, consumers might pick it up. Top claims were hydrating, natural, and vegan. There's been a real shift towards natural and clean hair care, skincare, beauty products. And I think a lot of it is born through a slight distrust of big companies from the consumer, and also a perceived idea that if something's natural, it's going to be gentle, but it's still going to work. There's natural benefits. And then the highest growth claims for 2023 to 2024 where hair regrowth, thickening, volume enhancement, there's been a load of talk about the benefits of things like minoxidil for hair growth, and offering an alternative that is based in personal care as opposed to something that is more medical is good for a lot of consumers that are a little bit worried, but not that worried. Free from claims, again, with this focus on natural ingredients. They are looking for things with no bleach or no chemicals. And with no chemicals, it's artificial chemicals as opposed to general. And also ingredient-focused claims with good sources of minerals and Ayurvedic. I think the Ayurvedic claim is quite interesting because I think that, again, ties in with this whole idea of consumers looking to natural products for benefits. There's an idea of trust in tradition, and this is where that's really coming into its own. With bath and shower, there's a lot of innovation in bath and shower, body wash and shower gel. And again, it's kind of the default product. Most people will use a shower gel, a body wash, on a daily, if not regular basis. The top claims were hydrating, natural and vegan, again following this idea of natural, kind of clean ingredients. There's a lot of those themes through the different categories, even outside of these. And the highest growth claims were product sustainability from recycled materials, biodegradable, from sustainable sources, and free from claims again. I think with the sustainability side of things, bath and shower is somewhere where there is not much of a difference in the perceived benefits of a product if it's okay to if it's really good. Unless it's something like the smell, there's not a lot of change. Consumers just assume it's getting you clean. There's not really a real marker of whether it's good or not. And so I think this is an interesting area where consumers are willing to kind of take the risk and buy something that is sustainable, as opposed to really having to rely on those product features as like the overall. So they're willing to spend that money, make it sustainable, feel good about themselves, as opposed to really running that risk of it not really working for you. So just briefly on sustainability and packaging in innovation, or innovation in packaging. We've seen a huge increase in the interest in refillable fragrances. I think particularly in the premium side of things. I think it's really interesting looking at the increase of that as a way of illustrating what consumers prioritize when it comes to premium versus sustainable. Consumers really want to have this premium packaging, but they don't want to pay for it more than once when there's no additional benefit from that. They would rather have their fragrance. I can have the same bottle. I'm not worried about buying a new bottle every time I go. And there's a benefit to brands by not having to manufacture more and more bottles. Shampoos are coming a lot more in powder forms. I've seen this at the past sort of few conferences and things that I've been to, and I think this is something that's really going to start entering the general space soon. I think there's a real benefit to consumers and to manufacturers if they can provide a sustainable product at a lower price by not having to transport water, essentially. And then again, that same point, but looking at comparing plastic to solid formats and being able to transport it in a slightly more condensed way. Consumers don't see any difference between having something that is in a cardboard box as opposed to being in a bottle. There's not that huge difference in perceived quality that perhaps there was a few years ago. So then finally, moving on to disruption. Now, again, it's a little bit of a difficult one to to illustrate, because it is this idea of kind of blue sky thinking, something that's really shaken up the market, something that's kind of unlike anything that consumers have heard before. So what I've done is just taken a couple of examples of things that we think have really disrupted the market and sort of comment on how that might change in the future. So the first is NeuroSense. I think it's a really interesting change in how consumers see the benefits of a product. I think it's fairly agreed that fragrance is quite emotional. Consumers like having their signature scent. And I think fragrance houses have done really well in really honing in on that benefit of the product by creating NeuroScents, which are, in the the most simple way, scents that are positioned to change your mood, to boost your mood. And so within innovation, we've tracked the claims that are attached to scents. And we're seeing a lot of increase in the number of fragrances that have mental health-related claims. It's really weighing in on this idea of a blurring between beauty and wellness, with stress relief claims in fragrances having 83% share of the fragrances that have mental health claims attached. We've also seen a 4% hike in energy-boosting claims in 2024. And I saw the other day, I think I know where it comes from, Adidas have launched a energizing scent in the mass market. And I think this is something that we're going to see more and more going through the forecast. These sort of high-end approaches to marketing, to product, that are going to trickle down into the mass market. And then secondly, tech, I think, is an area that has provided a lot of disruption in the past few years. I think born out of COVID, where consumers were really isolated and had to rely on a lot of tech for their beauty and personal care purchases, I think it's really something that we're going to see entering the zeitgeist a lot more. So the first sort of example I could give is looking at AI-assisted diagnostics. So looking at skincare complaints and having that assessed for you and products recommended at home without having to go to a dermatologist, without having to go to a shop and talk to someone about your rosacea, for example. We're also seeing a lot of traditionally salon products being used at home. So things like UV masks, sitting at home and being able to have a treatment that is using UV for skincare is becoming a lot more commonplace. And I think that's something that we're not going to see going anywhere, and I think it's only going to expand. The Dyson Airwrap, I think, is also an example of disruption. Okay, fine, consumers are familiar with hairstyling tools. That's not new, but the technology behind it and the way that it works is. And I think a lot of the reason that they've done so well is that they are something that is completely different, but also works. So, to summarise with some key takeaways, and then I will open the floor to questions. So I wanted to just summarise in terms of what we're expecting to see and how I think things are going to move over the short, medium and long term. So in the short term, brands are looking to reignite reinvent themselves to reignite consumer interest. They're enjoying a little bit more financial freedom. Everyone's in a sort of state of perma-crisis. And so consumers are starting to now kind of ignore what's going on when it comes to their purchasing. Skincare is obviously a key focus. There is a lot of room to innovate. There's a lot of products that you can add to your range if you need. In the medium term, products are going to be launched based on specific demographics. I think a lot of that is going to come in sort of gender splits and age splits, so things for specific periods in women's lives, and sort of very targeted products to look at very specific issues. I think M&A is going to start up a lot in the sort of coming years. I think there's a perceived sort of limited risk when it comes to M&A, particularly with brands that are well established. And I think we can expect to see that starting again, now that this kind of sense of permacrisis is, you just kind of have to get on with things. We also think that there are going to be a lot of launches focused on multi-purpose benefits. We're seeing this happening already, but I think in the medium term, this is really going to start happening a lot more, as consumers are very conscious of overconsumption. You know, they're trying to be sustainably, environmentally minded. In the long term, sustainability is going to become a priority when it comes to ingredients and products and packaging. I think it's very easy to kind of think of sustainability as an afterthought as a consumer, and I think this is something that is going to become far more front of mind, particularly as it's forced by regulation. Development is, it needs to be very true to the brands. I think consumers are very discerning these days, and if products are launched that are not at the core of what a brand is trying to do, consumers will see right through it, and they'll look the other way. They'll go to a competitor. And then finally, AI and tech is going to become a lot more commonplace. I mean, it's already starting again, but I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that, both in-store and online. So, ta-da. Thank you very much for listening. The QR code on the screen will allow you to download the slides. And then I will let you ask questions if you would like.